Chapter 1366, Interception. Tang Xiu shifted to Star Tears and asked with a smile, "You have obtained the inheritance of drunken Immortal Supreme? Do you now have a chance to advance to the supremacy stage?" "I'm sure I can break through to the supremacy stage within a century," replied Star Tears with a smile. "If that's the case, then you're to take these two little guys back." Tang Xiu nodded happily. It won't be easy for them to return to the Vermilion Bird Holy Sect safely given their present strength. Star Tears hesitated for a while and said, "But I'd like to stay here to cultivate for a century since I plan to go back after breaking through to the supremacy stage." After contemplating for a while, Tang Xiu took two objects out of his interspatial right and handed them to Star Tears. "Take these two things and you may be able to advance to the supremacy stage in less than a century. You can stay here since you chose so. Also, the secret palace hoards a lot of wealth, so take it with you when you come back too." Star Tears nodded slowly. But when she saw the two objects, her pupils contracted and she looked ecstatic. Earth Core and 5-colored Dragon Pearl? These two objects are all treasures and they are very important for me now. With them, I can definitely break through to the supremacy stage in a few decades at most. Tang Xiu just smiled lightly in response and then shifted to Sablefiend Scorpio. "Well, the secret palace already has a master now, so let's head out first." Sablefiend Scorpio pondered for a moment and asked, "Master, you and Venerable Star Tears are. It's not yet the time for you to know that." Tang Xiu shook his head. "Wait until I break through to the supremacy stage and I'll naturally tell you." Sablefiend Scorpio nodded silently and no longer asked. On the contrary, Star Luminous, who knew the true identity of Star Tears, wasn't able to suppress his excitement. Originally, he thought that his great-grand marshal aunt Star Tears had already passed away in some corners of the immortal world long ago. During this trip to the secret palace, he and Star Peng were the only people from their Vermilion Bird Holy Sect. He never thought that he would run into their great-grand marshal aunt here. Furthermore, she was the person who obtained the inheritance of the drunken Immortal Supreme. The heavens have blessed the Vermilion Bird Holy Sect. Star Luminous took a deep breath and looked at Tang Xiu and observed him quietly for some time, then he inquired, "Great-grand marshal aunt, who is he, exactly?" "You don't need to know for now." Star Tears shook her head. "The only thing you need to know is that you must be respectful whenever you see him in the future." "About this, understood." Despite a bit unwilling, Star Luminous still nodded and complied. After some time, Star Tears sent Tang Xiu and Sablefiend Scorpio off to the outside. When the two of them appeared in the forested mountain range some million kilometers away from the secret palace, they turned into an azure smoke and flew away without slightest delay and headed towards the nearest spatial teleportation array. Both of them had obtained a lot of treasures during the trip to the secret palace. Star Tears, especially. She collected a massive number of immortal artifacts, immortal crystals, and crystal essences from various areas in the secret palace and handed them to Tang Xiu before they left. The amount was sufficient for the Great Tang Empire to cover their overhead cost for several centuries. A few months passed by. Tang Xiu and Sablefiend Scorpio arrived in the Great Peng Immortal Domain and stayed in its main city, the Wind Reticulum City. After inquiring some news, it was finally determined that the struggle for the secret palace had fully come to an end, though no one knew the person who finally inherited the drunken Immortal Supreme's inheritance was. Further, some news also said that the Inner Pill Sect and the Everlasting Palace suffered enormous losses during the trip to the secret palace. The Inner Pill Sect lost more than a dozen perfected golden immortals and more than 100 golden immortals. The Everlasting Palace was even worse with over a dozen perfected golden immortals dead along with nearly 200 golden immortals. However, these two powerful sects were still barely able to bear these losses. On the contrary, the sect master of Myriad Sword Sect was said to be so furious that he destroyed his palace residence, the impact causing thousands of palace servants. This sect fully lost their entire 100,000 golden immortals and 46 perfected golden immortals. Most importantly, this sect's peerless genius, heroic sword venerable, also died in the secret palace. It must be noted that heroic sword venerable was the son of the myriad sword sect master, who had a 90% chance to be his successor. Dao Master Qingfeng from the pristine immortal Confucian sect is being hunted down by the myriad sword sect's powerhouses. Undemonized Sovereign Mo has been hit hard, and whether he's still alive or has died is unknown. It was the other news that was obtained by Tang Xiu and Sablefiend Scorpio. In a flash, Tang Xiu made up his mind to leave for the neighboring region, the 100 Sightless Immortal Domain, to rescue Dao Master Qingfeng. However, there were only 2 of them and they couldn't take any rash actions for this rescue mission given their strength. Hence, they needed accurate intel as a support to save these men safely and then escape immediately. The 100 Sightless Immortal Domain. In a barren rocky area, Dao Master Qingfeng anxiously looked at the fainted undemonized Sovereign Mo in his arms. He flew extremely fast, but the 4 perfected golden immortals were right on his heels, followed by tens of golden immortals. The more he saw them, the more helpless and powerless he felt. Cough, cough. During the escape, undemonized Sovereign Mo finally sobered up faintly. He looked at the anxious-looking Dao Master Qingfeng, who was fleeing quickly. A bitter smile appeared on his face and he said, "You haven't shaken off those myriad sword sex bastards?" "Not yet." Dao Master Qingfeng forced a smile. "They are lunatics and seemingly won't ever let us off without killing us first." Sovereign Mo swallowed a purple scent pill and adjusted his breathing for some time. He then sighed. Hey, the myriad sword sect was struck with huge losses during the trip to the secret palace, likely sapping nearly 50% of their power. They are venting their anger on us now. Humph, Dao Master Qingfeng sneered. Let them come if they want to vent on us. The more their people die, the happier I'll be. That's so unlike you. Sovereign Mo chuckled and said, "You were always merciful in the past, just like those bald old monkeys from the Buddhist realm. How come you have such a unique quirk now?"
Meh.
"The myriad sword sect is just a bunch of despicable assholes," replied Dao Master Qingfeng with a chuckle. "The more they die, the fewer people that will be bullied and killed in the future. Being kind to this sect means being cruel to others. I wish all of them to be fully annihilated." Bwahaha, Sovereign Mo burst into laughter and said, "I used to think you were very old school, Qingfeng. I didn't expect you to be so temperamental this time. Anyways, as long as we can escape this time, I'll definitely make the myriad sword sect pay a painful price." "No, don't act reckless and mess up now, undemonized Mo." Dao Master Qingfeng hurriedly blurted. "The myriad sword sect may have suffered huge losses this time, but a lean camel is still bigger than a horse." "That's right. Junior brother Dao Master Guai has messaged me, so we can't act recklessly for now. We won't end up great if we get caught by this sect's powerhouses." "I know that. Offending the myriad sword sect is equivalent to provoking the everlasting palace." Undemonized Sovereign Mo sneered. "In any case, I have a hunch that some people have specifically targeted the people of Inner Pill sect and Everlasting Palace in the secret palace, and they should be the ones who killed them. You're not the only one who thought so." Dao Master Qingfeng nodded. This time, the Inner Pill sect and the Everlasting Palace were hit hard and suffered enormous losses, worse than any other section. Undemonized Sovereign Mo's expression shifted and he said, "Do you think they are from the Vermilion Bird Holy sect? Those 2 sects have been harassing and bullying this sect all these years. Only those from this sect would specifically target and strike these 2 sects during the opening of the secret palace. This sect still has the capability to inflict such serious damage to those 2 sections." Dao Master Qingfeng shook his head. "That's unlikely. The Vermilion Bird Holy Sect is currently being forced to stay in their territory by the Inner Pill Sect and the Everlasting Palace. They won't dare to easily leave their sex protection array. Further, as far as I know, Great Emperor Danqing and the other Supreme from the Everlasting Palace have assigned some people to blockade the Vermilion Bird Holy Sex Land, making it very difficult for anyone from that sect to come out. It's very difficult, but it's not like there's no way out, said undemonized Sovereign Mo. Dao Master Qingfeng shook his head and sighed. Forget it, let's not talk about them now. The most important thing for us now is to find a way to shake off the myriad sword sect's pursuit. By the way, are you familiar with this 100th sightless region? No. I've been here once, but I'm not too familiar with the place. Undemonized Sovereign Mo shook his head. Then we're in trouble. Dao Master Qingfeng sighed. Our speed is too slow. If this situation continues, they will catch up with us in half a day at most. For a while, both of them felt a bit helpless and were at a loss as to what to do. Suddenly, Dao Master Qingfeng's expression changed and his eyes were full of vigilance as he shouted fiercely, "Come out! We already found you." How can you say you found us since you've fallen into the trap we've laid out for you? You will definitely meet your maker this time. 4 figures appeared out of nowhere in front of them. The one who spoke was their leader, a perfected golden Immortal of the Myriad Sword sect, Black Crow Venerable. Dao Master Qingfeng frowned deeply and asked, "How did you judge our escape route and come here a step ahead? One of our Myriad Sword sect's people has secretly cast the 1,000-mile sen on you before you fled previously." Black Crow Venerable happily smiled. "No matter where you flee, we'll quickly find you. Most importantly, the Stone City's city lord in this 100 sightless region is one of ours, to begin with. You both never expected it, did you? I'm the city lord of Stone City, Celestial Stone Old Man. Of course, I'm also a disciple of the Myriad Sword sect." A white-haired old man with a white beard sneered. A contemptuous look was evident in his eyes as he looked at Dao Master Qingfeng and undemonized Sovereign Mo. Black Crow Venerable took out 7 black flags from his interspatial ring and quickly arranged the 7 heavens sealing evil array, while looking at Dao Master Qingfeng and undemonized Sovereign Mo playfully. Chapter 1367, Fighting to Save the Critical Situation. Dao Master Qingfeng immediately understood, but he shook his head and sighed. It seems the direction we're fleeing is your territory. No wonder you can find us so easily and determine the direction of our escape. Since you keep pursuing us, let the rumble begin then. But you'll have to pay a terrible price if you want to make us stay here. Black Crow Venerable nodded and said, "You're right that we must pay a price if we want to kill both of you. But do you still think you can do so after you see this?" With that said, he took out a pair of scrolls from his interspatial right and cast a technique. The scrolls instantly flew and slowly unfolded in midair. The pair of scrolls turned out to be paintings with 18 patterns drawn on them. Each pattern was a design of an uncanny weapon. Even if they were in the form of paintings on the scrolls, these 18 weapons still gave off a chilling sense. Immortal Executioner Armament Scrolls? Dao Master Qingfeng looked horrified and exclaimed in disbelief. Black Crow Venerable proudly smiled. "You know it? This thing is the supreme treasure of your pristine Immortal Confucian sect. It took us a lot of effort to obtain this object, but now we're using it to deal with you. The price we're gonna pay is much smaller now, no?" An intense killing intent burst out from Dao Master Qingfeng and he shouted fiercely, "Did my master ancestor, Venerable Ares, was killed by your Myriad Sword sect's people?" "You guessed right." Black Crow Venerable grinned. "I'm not afraid to tell you that I was one of those who slew your ancestor 1,300 years ago. You know, Venerable Ares was a very powerful man. A perfected golden immortal late stage, yet he was able to withstand the onslaught of our 6 perfected golden immortals for quite a long time before we slaughtered him. That was quite a brilliant performance, wasn't it? Pity that he was still finally killed in our hands. You were not there then, else you could have seen how wonderful it was when he detonated his immortal soul. Dao Master Qingfeng's eyes turned bloodshot and a battle armor suddenly covered his body along with a scripture that appeared in his hand, out of nowhere. The armor was an 8th grade artifact, and what he held was also an 8th grade weapon, both of which were his killing cards. Revenge is due. Blood for blood and a tooth for a tooth. Dao Master Qingfeng fell into madness. He had never hated anyone so much and wished he could crush Black Crow Venerable. The closest and best person to him was not his master, but rather his master ancestor who was killed 1,300 years ago, Venerable Ares. Undemonized Sovereign Mo glanced at Dao Master Qingfeng and sighed inwardly. He then took a jade bottle from his interspatial ring and poured a pill into his mouth. Suddenly, his aura gradually rose even though he was seriously injured. In just several breaths, his aura had surpassed his peak. We only have an hour at best, Qingfeng. We'll survive if we can kill them within the time. But if we fail to kill them, then only death awaits both of us. Let the showdown begin. Let this undemonized Sovereign Mo accompany your madness today. Dao Master Qingfeng replied with his actions. He waved his hand and scroll in his hand flew into the air, releasing golden runes like flowing water. As endless changes occurred to the runes, they then bombarded Black Crow Venerable. On the other side, a flying knife appeared in the hands of undemonized Sovereign Mo out of the blue. The flying knife that seemed to be only a few inches long instantly turned into tens of thousands of sword shadows that shot towards Black Crow Venerable from all directions. Focused lightning art. Another art was cast and lightning bolts flashed down from the highest heaven. These lightning bolts did not directly strike Black Crow Venerable's group of 4 but bombarded together, along with the blade shadows of the flying No. Suddenly, tens of thousands of sword shadows were connected in series by lightning sparks and formed a lighting chain blade net. Black Crow Venerable looked solemn upon seeing it. Dazzling golden rays suddenly bloomed from the picture scrolls and the 18 weapon patterns on it suddenly materialized and flushed towards Dao Master Qingfeng and undemonized Sovereign Mo. These 18 weapons then formed a special battle formation and clashed with the countless runes and blade shadows. It was a clash between magical weapons and spells. The 6 combatants from both sides showcased their respective magical powers, and the fight began with each unleashing their strongest killing moves. An hour later, Black Crow Venerable let out a bit of contempt. He just heard what undemonized Sovereign Mo said that he could only insist for an hour, which should be related to the pill he swallowed. Focused finger of sword form, /. Acutely sensing the rapid weakening of undemonized Sovereign Mo's aura, Black Crow Venerable was overjoyed. He finally decided to rush to the spot several meters away in front of Sovereign Mo in an attempt to slay him. Let's die together. Undemonized Sovereign Mo suddenly shouted and his aura burst out again. In nearly a flash, he appeared in front of Black Crow Venerable and directly unleashed his innate natal immortal sword, and pierced through the shadow left by Black Crow Venerable, causing the latter's complexion to change greatly. Blast. One of the myriad sword sects perfected Golden Immortal, behind Black Crow Venerable never dreamed that a strike would come from the direction of Black Crow Venerable. He was caught off guard and had no chance to evade nor defend himself as his chest was hit hard and left a bowl-sized hole. Black Crow Venerable, who avoided the strike, suddenly felt deep regret upon seeing the miserable state of his companion, arousing and nearly materializing his killing intent. He knew that he was deceived by undemonized Sovereign Mo. The pill the latter took definitely did not make him able to insist just for an hour, and the target of his attack a while was not him. After giving it a thought, he realized that the target was his companion. The instant after, Black Crow Venerable no longer focused his attention to attack undemonized Sovereign Mo but quickly took out a black jade bottle, and put his companion's immortal soul inside. Kill them. The other 2 perfected Golden Immortals sent a barrage of powerful blast towards Dao Master Qingfeng. One of them then turned to lunge towards undemonized Sovereign Mo, and his innate natal immortal weapon blasted the latter's chest, in a split second after. However, even though he severely injured undemonized Sovereign Mo, He couldn't avoid the counterattack by the latter and was wounded by Sovereign Mo's flying knife. The strike could have killed him had it not been for his high-grade Immortal defensive artifact. We're now in a desperate situation and the array is barring us from escaping. Undemonized Sovereign Mo felt a bit bitter, yet he didn't have any regret whatsoever. It was all for the sake of his best friend, so he had no regrets even if he lost his life here. His only regret was that he couldn't pull Blackcrow Venerable's group of 4 into the grave with him. My only choice left is to detonate my immortal soul. Even if the explosion can't kill them, at least it will make them pay a terrible price. Undemonized Sovereign Mo took a deep breath and prepared to detonate his immortal soul. Buzz. Suddenly, an invisible force burst directly from outside the array. In a split second after, a kilometer-long divine sword beam flashed and directly toward the surrounding formations and slashed the perfected golden immortal, who attacked undemonized Sovereign Mo before. Even though the man had a high-grade defensive artifact, his head was still hit and split into halves. What? Blackcrow Venerable and the other perfected golden immortal looked horrified at the same time. The moment their complexions changed greatly, the scenery in front of them changed and they froze momentarily. Slash. Puff. Crack. Puff. The seriously injured Dao Master Qingfeng and undemonized Sovereign Mo sent their final blows, directly striking Blackcrow Venerable and the other perfected golden immortal. Although they failed to fatally injure them, both their targets were sent flying after getting hit by their heavy blows. Shadowless Scorpion Tail. Out of nowhere, a black shadow suddenly blocked the path of Blackcrow Venerable's flying direction. A scorpion tail appeared and struck hard, directly piercing his abdomen. At the same time, a long whip suddenly lashed from that black shadow and hit Blackcrow Venerable's immortal soul that attempted to run from his body. The sudden turn of events made Dao Master Qingfeng and undemonized Sovereign Mo ecstatic. Although they had no idea who and where these two helpers came from, they were sure that these people were definitely friends since they helped them in such a desperate strait. Kill. After slaying Blackcrow Venerable, the 4 people teamed up without hesitation and launched a fierce onslaught on the last perfected golden immortal who had just been hit hard. In just 15 minutes, that perfected golden immortal roared in a rage full of unwillingness as he was killed by the 4. Dao Master Qingfeng took a deep breath to calm down his boiling blood and then sealed up his bleeding wounds. Then he asked undemonized Sovereign Mo, "How is your condition? Can you still bear it?" Undemonized Sovereign Mo's pale face squeezed out a smile uglier than crying, but he shook his head and then nodded to Tang Xiu and Sablefiend Scorpio before directly slumping to the ground. He then took out a purple scent pill and swallowed it before sitting cross-legged on the ground to recuperate. A concerned look flashed in the eyes of Dao Master Qingfeng. His eyes moved away from undemonized Sovereign Mo and shifted to Tang Xiu and Sablefiend Scorpio. Then, he cupped his fists and said, "Thank you for your help, the virtue and benevolence this Qingfeng will never forget. May I ask who these 2 friends are?" "I'm Great Tang Heavenly Emperor and she's my retainer," said Tang Xiu with a smile.
Ah.
"You're that Great Tang Heavenly Emperor, the mysterious powerhouse in the secret palace?" Dao Master Qingfeng blurted in surprise. "Calling me a powerhouse is rather incorrect, though I do have a bit of talent," replied Tang Xiu with a smile. "Sight. Your Great Tang Heavenly Emperor title has now spread through more than half of the immortal world and is known to many powerhouses." Dao Master Qingfeng sighed. "You have displayed a shocking performance in the secret palace, outshining many powerful people there. Many people are speculating whether you're the one who finally got the inheritance of Drunken Immortal Supreme. Well, the secret palace of Drunken Immortal Supreme should still be in the Boundless Mountain Range, right?" "How could I possibly be that lucky guy since I'm here now?" replied Tang Xiu with a pale smile. "Besides, fame is not a good thing for me, to begin with. After all, I understand the truth that the tallest tree in the forest will only court destruction from the wind." Dao Master Qingfeng nodded slowly and said, "That's sound reasoning. But I just don't understand one thing. You and I have never had any relationship before, so why did you help us? Chapter 1368, Inciting Troubles. Tang Xiu glanced at undemonized Sovereign Mo, who sat cross-legged in cultivation nearby, and replied lightly, I have 2 reasons. Firstly, Dao Master Qingfeng is a good person with a righteous character. Even before the secret palace was opened and you were forced to fight in the boundless mountain range, there were so many friends who came forward and stood up and fought with you to uphold justice. That just shows that you're a friend worth making. And I, Great Tang Heavenly Emperor, like to make friends with such people. Secondly, I have a friendship with Dao Master Guai from the pristine Immortal Confucian sect. Though what I did was not for his sake, but for someone related to him, you're still his senior brother, so how could I just stand by and watch while you're in danger? This Taoist, Qingfeng, will always remember your life-saving grace, Great Tang Heavenly Emperor, said Dao Master Qingfeng with all seriousness. From now onwards, you're now my friend. Heavenly Emperor can freely ask this one for assistance should you need it in the future. As long as your request is within this Taoist's capabilities, this one will definitely carry it out. Also, I didn't expect that you and my junior brother know each other. But he has never mentioned anything about becoming friends with you when I came back to the sect, Great Tang Heavenly Emperor. That's rather strange to me. Tang Xiu chuckled and said, well, maybe he thought that it was unnecessary to mention it. Because perhaps he didn't even know from where a friend named Great Tang Heavenly Emperor emerged. Dao Master Qingfeng stared blankly and was bewildered. Anyway, let's spare you from getting puzzled with this issue, okay? Tang Xiu waved his hand. By the way, where would you like to go now, Dao Master Qingfeng? We can go together if your destination is the same as us. If not, we can escort you to some immortal domains on the way. Dao Master Qingfeng hesitated and forced a smile. Undemonized Sovereign Mo and I are seriously injured now. But I fear that I'll implicate you if we go along with you since this region belongs to a disciple of the Myriad Sword sect. Tang Xiu raised his brows and lightly smiled. It's fine. You can avoid the pursuit of anyone from the Myriad Sword sect by entering my heavenly abode artifact. As for us, I don't think that sect will have time to take care of me. Dao Master Qingfeng hesitated before he finally agreed. He could see that the Great Tang Heavenly Emperor didn't have any intention to harm them. If he did, he wouldn't have saved them before and they would have already died now. The moment after, Tang Xiu moved Dao Master Qingfeng and undemonized Sovereign Mo to the Heavenly Abode artifact. Then, he shifted to Sable Fiend Scorpio and slowly said, I didn't expect to become famous overnight after the Secret Palace event. I even got suspected by countless immortals to be the lucky guy who got the inheritance of Drunken Immortal Supreme. It seems like we need to create some incidents to be more famous, huh? Sable Fiend Scorpio nodded in response and said, it's as you said, Master. But the secret palace is still there. As long as you prove that you're not inside it at this time, you can break the rumors that you've obtained the inheritance of Drunken Immortal Supreme. Else, it won't be just us who will become the target of surveillance from countless forces in the immortal world, but also the Great Tang Empire. After contemplating for a while, Tang Xiu asked, are you familiar with this immortal domain or some other regions nearby, by chance? There's an immortal domain I'm very familiar with about 3 regions away from here, said Sable Fiend Scorpio. It's the ethereal immortal domain, and the city lord of Ethereal City is my friend. If so, then let's head there, said Tang Xiu without hesitation. Suddenly, his complexion changed because he could sense that tens of powerful auras were coming fast in their direction. And these auras belonged to golden immortals. They must be the people from the Myriad Sword sect. We can't fight them since there's too many them, so we'll leave first. We'll wait for some time and then clean them up, Tang Xiu said in a deep voice. Sable Fiend Scorpio thought for a while and suddenly said, Master, why don't you let me kill them before we leave? Even if we can't annihilate them, at least we can make some troubles for them. Tang Shou gave it a thought and handed her a thunder pellet he had casually purchased before and said, "Then I'm going first and wait for you in the next immortal domain. Find me directly in the main city there, I'll be waiting for you at the gate of the largest city." Understood. Sable Fiend Scorpio was surprised upon seeing the thunder pellet. She was sure she could inflict heavy damage on the enemy with this item. 15 minutes after Tang Shou left, tens of golden immortals came flying in a group. They turned vigilant after seeing the aftermath and traces of the battle. According to the agreement with the 4 perfected golden immortals, they were to gather here after those 4 had slain Dao Master Qingfeng and undemonized Sovereign Mo. However, there was no trace of those 4 perfected golden immortals. Even Dao Master Qingfeng and undemonized Sovereign Mo had disappeared without a trace. How did the battle end? It was the question they had in mind now. Suddenly, the complexion of a late-stage golden immortal changed greatly. In nearly a flash, he dashed away with the fastest speed he could unleash in his life when a black shadow suddenly bolted towards them. Boom. A terrible explosion enveloped a radius of tens of kilometers, and the fearsome explosion impact blasted to hundreds of kilometers. More than a dozen of the tens of golden immortals who were caught off guard were directly killed and the rest were heavily injured, and spurted out mouthfuls of blood. The might of this thunder pellet is very terrifying, and one costs 5 million crystal essences. Even a perfected golden immortal caught off guard will probably be gravely injured, no? Sable Fiend Scorpio smiled gleefully. Her figure bolted lightning fast as she unleashed her precantator weapon and harvested the life of a nearby golden immortal, who had been severely injured. In just 15 minutes, several golden immortal met their tragic deaths in her hands. Join up and kill her, everyone. The golden immortal that escaped the fastest previously only suffered minor injuries and roared loudly after flying back. Quickly, the remaining several golden immortals all gathered together and released their respected immortal weapons, intending to go all out to slay Sable Fiend Scorpio. Humph. Sable Fiend Scorpio didn't want to get pestered by these people. Not to mention that the combining attack power of a dozen golden immortals was still very scary. She may be confident that she could annihilate them, but she would likely be seriously injured as well. Further, she also had a concern that the rest of the powerhouses from the Myriad Sword sect were still rushing to support them. 10 days later, Sable Fiend Scorpio and Tang Shou met in a nearby immortal domain. Hardly without any hesitation, they dashed towards the ethereal immortal domain. Even though both of them encountered some troubles along the way, they were just minor troubles and were easily dealt with by them. However, with the purpose of making himself more famous, Tang Shou spent a lot of effort to announce his title, Great Tang Heavenly Emperor, every time he dealt with an enemy. Therefore, when he and Sable Fiend Scorpio were heading to the ethereal immortal domain fast, some forces quickly obtained the intelligence about them and knew that the expert called Great Tang Heavenly Emperor was currently not in the secret palace. Thus, they now determined that the lucky guy who had obtained the inheritance of Drunken Immortal Supreme was definitely not this Great Tang Heavenly Emperor guy. In the ethereal immortal domain, this region was under the control of the Everlasting Palace's branch. At the moment, tens of perfected golden immortals and hundreds of golden immortals came out of the spatial teleportation array and showed up near floating Snow City. Donning a white jersey, the long silver-haired Argent Marshal Hale had been suppressing his anger inwardly. On the surface, however, he respectfully looked at a black-robed old man and said, "Senior Cambrian, this subordinate has a minor private matter to deal with, so this one can't accompany you to the floating Snow City. Please use the message token to summon me should you have anything to tell me. This one will definitely come over at once." The black-robed old man glanced differently at him and sneered inwardly. He knew the reason why Argent Marshal Hale wanted to leave. It was because this guy was often bullied by the other disciples of Everlasting Palace, so he wanted to hide far away from them. He himself was very disgusted about a traitor like Argent Marshal Hale, so he was also against him following him. Thus, with a gesture as though sweeping flies, he impatiently waved his hand. Then scram quickly and don't be an eyesore. Also, get more cultivation resources for me later and I'll be happy if you find me some good things. Understood, Argent Marshal Hale respectfully replied. Once this one encounters some good things, this one will immediately present them to you, sir. The black-robed old man indifferently nodded and then left with a group of perfected golden immortals and golden immortals quickly, leaving only Argent Marshal Hale, whose complexion gradually changed. Damn you, dog mongrel. The moment I'm no longer under your control and free myself from the everlasting palace's restraints, I'll kill all of you then. Just wait. You all just wait for me. Argent Marshal Hale clenched his fists and a soul-stirring killing intent overflowed in his eyes. As of now, he missed the days when he followed Star Cultivation Great Emperor. The feeling of being at the apex, superior, free to do as he liked, and enjoying an inexhaustible supply of various resources. Yet, he was a traitor, a label that was unpleasant to hear, causing him to feel guilty. However, he chose to survive. And compared to being alive, he chose such a heavy betrayal. Sometimes, the hatred toward his master, Star Cultivation Great Emperor, birthed inside him. Why did he fail his tribulation and made him lose his shelter and protection? After quite a while, Argent Marshal Hale quietly entered the floating snow city alone and came to a path leading to a low-rise residential area. He came to a courtyard, pushed the door, and came to the interior. He voraciously looked at the hot and voluptuous girls inside as he dashed to one and hugged her. Do you miss me, Zither? Argent Marshal Hale voraciously kissed her and smilingly asked. Some disgust birthed in the heart of the stunning belle the moment she saw Argent Marshal Hale. On the surface, however, she let out a dazzling smile and sweetly laughed and replied with a coy voice, I miss you. I've been missing you all the time. I've always been missing the time when you held me in your arms. I even dreamed a few days ago that you'd come back. Just promise that you won't leave again this time, okay? Argent Marshal Hale groaned as though he was coping with her plea. He then took her into a room while still hugging her. No, I can't. It's inconvenient. I'm not available now, the stunning belle hurriedly cried out. You what? Argent Marshal Hale stared blankly and looked annoyed. He directly threw off the lass from his arms and spoke with a cold face. You're not available now, huh? Then I'll come for you another day. I suddenly remembered that I have some things to deal with first. Chapter 1369, Trapping a Worthless Dead Man. Floating Snow City, Lithe Plume Mansion. The continuous mansion was the largest red light district building in the floating snow city, a lady of the evening's mansion, a man's paradise, and a money-squandering establishment. Given the popular statistics of some immortals, each lady in the Lithe Plume Mansion was attractive in her own way. Each of whom was a lady of the evening of various races and immortal prostitutes. After leaving the woman working there, Argent Marshal Hale rushed to the Lithe Plume Mansion, and spent the immortal crystals he obtained from the secret palace generously to reward the two immortal prostitutes he called over to accompany him. He had no idea that someone had been tailing him the moment he entered the Lithe Plume Mansion. Disguised as a pretty boy, Sable Fiend Scorpio kept tailing Tangxiu as they entered the Lithe Plume Mansion. Her always cold face looked unnatural, for she had never been to such a place even though she had been living freely in the immortal world for several thousands of years. Tangxiu's cold eyes were fixed on Argent Marshal Hale's back. He hated the Inner Pill sect and the Everlasting Palace as they were his archenemies, but he hated traitors even more. Especially this peerless genius who had once been very close to him, a direct disciple he had spent great attention to and groomed him seriously. He spotted Argent Marshal Hale outside the gate of Floating Snow City. He didn't alarm the guy but kept following him all the way. He even observed the meeting between him and that voluptuous woman. Just let me kill him directly, Lord, said Sable Fiend Scorpio in a whisper. I can kill him within 10 breaths at most. Tangxiu shook his head. He looked at the private room on the opposite side and replied indifferently, Do you know what Argent Marshal Hale is best at? Pardon? What he's best at? Sablefiend Scorpio was puzzled. He's great at saving his own ass, said Tang Xiu lightly. Does this guy really fear death that much? Sablefiend Scorpio in surprise. Tang Xiu didn't answer her question, but he then realized inwardly that his previous appraisal of his former disciple's cautious approach was completely mistaken. This guy was not cautious at all, but one who always put his life first and feared death. Had he known that this guy had such a quirk, he wouldn't have received him as his disciple and just killed him directly instead. Time went by. Argent Marshal Hale had been staying in the private room on the opposite side for 3 days, enjoying the service of 2 immortal hustlers. He was like a manifestation of one who led a befuddled life as if being drunk or in a dream. Whoosh. A figure flickered and came lightning fast silently in the private room where Tang Xiu was sitting. Aside from him, there was also a golden core female prostitute soundly sleeping. How is the arrangement going? Tang Xiu noticed the return of Sablefiend Scorpion and immediately asked. A smile was cast on the corner of Sablefiend Scorpio's mouth as she replied, "Everything's been arranged, Lord. However, we have to pay 800,000 immortal crystals." No matter. Immortal crystals are meant to be spent. As long as it can achieve its purpose, let alone paying 800,000, even spending 8 million is still worth it, replied Tang Xiu lightly. Your subordinate understands. Sablefiend Scorpio nodded. Finally, after Tang Xiu and Sablefiend Scorpio waited until the 4th day, Argent Marshal Hale then came out of the private room while hugging 2 immortal prostitutes towards the lobby on the 1st floor, and then headed outside. Thump. A loud gong-like sound suddenly reverberated and an obese middle-aged woman with thick makeup came to the hall, surrounded by tens of girls. After garnering the attention of hundreds of people in the hall, she smiled and said, "It's really a good fortune and a blessing for you all, dear guests. We just received a beautiful immortal flower. And most importantly, she's still a virgin. However, we shall arrange a new game today as this immortal flower is not going to stay at the live plume mansion and will be auctioned. Should any guest like to hug this bell, you can bid later." Amid the crowd, Argent Marshal Hale was surprised because he rarely encountered such an interesting live action in the live plume mansion. He hesitated for a bit before sitting on a chair. "Jing Xian, come," the obese woman waved her handkerchief and shouted loudly. Immediately after, a gorgeous young woman with a graceful stature and wearing a white veil walked down the stairs. A faint fragrance floated from her and the hundreds of guests in the hall were suddenly shocked. Their voracious and greedy eyes kept wandering around her sensitive parts. With his powerful strength, Argent Marshal Hale had keen eyesight, but his crotch heated up when he saw Jing Xian's face behind the white veil. A voracious look was evident in his eyes. A real beauty. A truly stunning, peerless belle. He, who had seen and tasted a countless women, instantly made up his mind inwardly. No matter how much he must pay, he must bid and obtain this peerless belle. Else, he felt that he would regret it for a very long time. The fat woman smiled and said, "As I've mentioned, Jing Xian is still a virgin and our lithe plume mansion has trained her for many years. She will definitely be a first-class expert in serving her man in the future. Any man who can bid and take her will definitely feel the best and absolute enjoyment. Without further ado, Jing Xian, remove your veil. Everyone, please feast your eyes on her." In the next moment, under the gaze of countless eyes, Jing Xian raised her slim jade fingers to take off the veil covering her face. Shen then gently bowed forward to salute everyone and softly said, "Xian greets all the distinguished guests here. Regardless of any guests who would like to buy Xian, please treat Xian kindly. Xian will definitely do her best to please and serve her future owner." Buzz. The hall instantly exploded and countless cries of exclamation and chattering sounded. "Oh my god. This is the first time I've seen such a beautiful fairy maiden. Even the hottest immortal prostitutes in the Lithe Plume Mansion can't compare with her, right? She's so gorgeous, definitely the most mind-blowing beautiful goddess in my heart. What do I see here? How can there be such a beautiful woman in this world? The sun, moon, and stars are seemingly overshadowed by her. Damn it, my heart is beating so fast. I must obtain her. Let alone having her, even a kiss from her is enough to make me live 100 years longer and younger. She's truly a fairy maiden. All those women I've seen and met before are non-existent in front of her. I must have her. I must. I'll even sell my innate natal immortal sword for her. Argent Marshal Hale stared straight at Jing Xian with a slightly trembling body. He had seen a lot of stunning beauties, but those on par with this Jing Xian were definitely rare. Her beauty was soul-stirring and soul-captivating, capturing his heart completely at the moment. I have to get her even if I must go bankrupt. Running into such a top woman like her in this life is very difficult. Argent Marshal Hale took a deep breath. Then, he shifted to the fat woman and said aloud, "We've seen this belle's true appearance, so can we start the bidding now?" On the 6th floor, Tang Xiu was standing in the corridor while observing that guy's expression in the hall below. He sneered inwardly and turned his head, saying, "Be prepared to lend that guy some money if he doesn't have enough. It's likely he'll burn all his capital given his expression." Sable Fiend Scorpio's eyes flashed with contempt, saying, "He has no good character at all, unable to resist the temptation of beauty whatsoever." Tang Xiu lightly smiled and said, "I admire you on this one, Sable Fiend Scorpio. I didn't expect you to find such stunning beauty in such a short time." Sable Fiend Scorpio smiled and asked, "You may take her when the show is over if you like her, Lord. Her identity may be rather complicated, but it won't be a problem if I get involved." Tang Xiu hastily waved. No. You might as well harm me doing that. To begin with, those at home, cough, cough. I'm still in a deep headache until now. Sable Fiend Scorpio's smile became more intense and she added, "Well, it's just normal for a powerhouse to have 3 wives and some mistresses, Lord. Even having countless beauties is still considered normal. Besides, you're the most outstanding genius I've ever seen. No matter how many femme fatale, you're worth following by them. Spare me the topic, will you?" Tang Xiu shook his head. "My goal is to become stronger. I don't want to get too entangled with women's affairs." "All right, arrange some people since I must trap him hard this time. I won't just make him lose everything but also sweep his reputation down the drain. I'll make this fella die in regret and anger." "Understood." Sable Fiend Scorpio put away her smile and silently disappeared in the corridor. In the lobby, the obese woman looked at Argent Marshal Hale's attitude and sneered inwardly. She knew that this auction was held entirely to trap this guy. Seeing him cooperate so well, she smilingly said, "Well, this noble guest seems unable to wait any longer, so I'm sure you've prepared a lot of money, yes? If so, for fear of wasting everyone's time, I hereby announce that Jing Xian's bid is starting with a floor price of 1 million crystal essences. If you'd like to participate in the auction, the increment of each bid must not be less than 500,000 crystal essences." Gasp. The hundreds of guests in the entire hall gasped. Most of them could afford to spend 1 million immortal crystals, but 1 million crystal essences would drive anyone crazy. 1.5 million crystal essences. Right as the obese woman's voice faded away, a womanizer-looking middle-aged man in the crowd raised his hand and shouted, "I'm the only who deserves such beauty. 1.5 million crystal essences, and this peerless belle is mine later. What a bull. 2 million crystal essences. I have nothing else but money here." Another youth sneered and directly increased the bid. 2.5 million. 3 million. Both of them kept increasing their bids and Jing Xian's auction price sharply skyrocketed all the way to 5.5 million crystal essences. Before stopping. Chapter 1370, Nothing was gained but a double loss. Seeing that the young man no longer raised the price, and when the obese woman was about to speak, Argent Marshal Hale briskly raised his hand and said in a deep voice, 8 million crystal essences. The greasy-looking middle-aged man suddenly turned around and glared at him, fuming. 10 million crystal essences. I'll give up should anyone bid higher than me. Gasp. The hundreds of guests in the entire hall gasped, including the other mortal and immortal prostitutes. Disbelief covered their faces. They never dreamed that someone would be willing to spend 10 million crystal essences just for a woman. Argent Marshal Hale smiled coldly. Had he not had a trip to the secret palace, he wouldn't have been able to fork out 10 million crystal essences. He had obtained a lot of treasures back when he was adventuring in the secret palace, and the total value was beyond 10 million crystal essences, so he shouted again, 10.5 million crystal essences. Such a superb woman deserves a similar great lord with deep wealth. In that instant, the whole hall was so silent that anyone could hear a needle falling to the floor. Suddenly, a lean and ordinary-looking middle-aged man shouted with a deep voice, "Then I bid 20 million crystal essences for her. Let me see who dares to proclaim himself a great lord with such deep pockets. Do you think I'll be scared of comparing wealth with you? This stunning belle is not someone some dirt-poor fella can have." Fuck. Argent Marshal Hale's self-esteem was severely provoked. His killing intent-filled glare swept over that middle-aged man again and again. He breathed heavily several times and shouted aloud, 30 million crystal essences. You wanna go crazier than this? Bring it on and bid higher if you got the capital. The lean middle-aged man hesitated and fell into silence for some time. Then, he bid again after swallowing his tense feelings. 35 million crystal essences to buy this peerless belle. If anyone else bids higher than me, then I. 35 million. Everyone present was deeply agitated by this fearsome amount. 35 million crystal essences was an astronomical figure in their eyes. Argent Marshal Hale nearly blew up with rage. He never imagined that someone would dare to bid such an outrageous price for an immortal hustler. Most importantly, this man kept provoking him. He had been experiencing humiliation as though he was a dog in the everlasting palace, and now, after he left the sect, an outsider still crossed him too? That simply felt more painful than stabbing him, inciting his rage. 40 million crystal essences. His words finally seeped out through his teeth. He didn't have that many crystal essences, but he still had a lot of immortal artifacts in possession. Selling all of them should barely make up for the amount. The middle-aged man was as though getting struck by lightning and stared in a daze as he slumped to his seat, unable to speak for a long time. The obese woman was also stimulated by Argent Marshal Hale's bid, but she was well aware that such a huge amount did not belong to her. She took a deep breath and said aloud, "May I know your name, noble guest?" Argent Marshal Hale. The moment he spat out his name, Argent Marshal Hale felt relieved all of a sudden. But the instant after, a pang of regret began to multiply in his heart. After reflecting on himself, he realized that he had been reckless since 40 million crystal essences was an absolutely terrifying number. Yet, he prodigally burned all of it to buy a woman even though the female was a peerless stunning belle. No matter what, it was just not worth it. The obese woman smiled. Then I'd like Sir Argent Marshal Hale to pay now. Jing will be your private property once you've paid the crystal essences. Argent Marshal Hale was silent for a moment and then slowly said, "I have not enough crystal essences with me now, but I have a lot of immortal artifacts that can be exchanged for sufficient crystal essences. Call the appraiser here. I need him to assess their prices." The obese woman's expression suddenly turned cold. She made a few gestures, then tens of powerful auras could be felt silently appearing in the surroundings. Shortly after, she sneered. "Do you know what this place is? Do you think we'll have any appraiser working here? Noble guest, you shouldn't have played us and struck our ire. Just speak directly if you can't pay. Of course, those who have played us never had any good end. You should have heard about our backers. Argent Marshal Hale was furious, but under the gazes of the public, he finally replied with a headache. Immortal artifacts can be mortgaged. Everyone knows it. I definitely can pay if I can mortgage these artifacts. I'm sorry, but no. The obese woman shook her head. At this moment, the young man who previously bid in the auction blurted. Hey, I can buy your artifacts, but surely I'll only buy at a lower price than in the shops. Given that he couldn't leave to sell his immortal artifacts, Argent Marshal Hale was immediately very happy after hearing the youth's offer. He quickly took out an interspatial ring and threw it to the young man. Appraise the objects yourself and state your price. The young man took the ring and used his spiritual sense to check its space. After carefully appraising the items for a long time, he then slowly said, 16 million crystal essences. We'll close the deal if you accept. And if you don't, I'll leave. Are you taking advantage to rob me while I'm in a pinch? Argent Marshal Hale growled angrily. I've already appraised these artifacts myself. All of them are worth 24 million at the very least, yet you offer me 16 million? Isn't that too much of a trap? You know, you're overestimating the total value of your artifacts, buddy. The youth sneered. 16 million, take it or leave it. To begin with, I'm helping you out of goodwill, yet you don't even appreciate it and just lash out your tantrum at me. Being scolded right at his face made Argent Marshal Hale's become white and blue. He finally gritted his teeth and said, fine. 16 million it is. I still have 2 artifacts here, one offensive and one defensive. Their total value must be over 10 million. The young man received the 2 objects and appraised them carefully. Afterward, he said expressionlessly, 8 million crystal essences and I'll take them. If you don't want to, then forget our previous deal. Consider me watching a spectacle of you buying your stunning belle here. The remark was so merciless and ruthless, causing Argent Marshal Hale to bleed inside. However, for fear that the young man wouldn't buy his artifacts, he finally nodded and said, fine, fine. You're willing to buy my things, so let's close the deal. A total of 24 million crystal essences then. The young man nodded, took out an interspatial ring, and threw it to him, saying, there are 24 million crystal essences in it. Your immortal treasures are mine from now on. No problem, replied Argent Marshal Hale bitterly. Quickly after, he paid 40 million crystal essences to the obese woman. As the obese woman brought Jing to him, despite her unparalleled stunning beauty, he couldn't help but want to slap her on impulse. It must be noted that he had sold everything he had except for the immortal sword inside his body. He only had 3.7 million crystal essences left after paying 40 million for Jing Xian. Follow me. Argent Marshal Hale took Jing Xian away under everyone's watch. Quickly after, Sable Fiend Scorpio came to see the obese woman and the young man in a secret chamber to receive all the crystal essences and artifacts. After collecting all of them, he casually threw 800,000 crystal essences to them and tipped each of them 10,000 more. Afterward, she took everything and quickly left. Tang Xiu silently followed Argent Marshal Hale and Jing Xian. At the moment, this guy's aura became a bit chaotic and his mind was definitely unstable, so Tang Xiu was confident that he wouldn't be spotted. In the residential area of Floating Snow City. Right as Jing Xian followed Argent Marshal Hale to a deep alley, her pace suddenly came to a halt and a pitiful expression was cast on her stunning face. What's wrong? Argent Marshal Hale was in a foul mood. After realizing that Jing Xian stopped walking, he immediately turned around and grimly asked. Jing Xian hesitated for a while before a blush gradually covered her face, saying, I'd like to go to a restroom, master. Going to a latrine? Argent Marshal Hale stared blankly for a while and observed Jing Xian's blushing face. His foul mood calmed down a lot and he said in a deep voice, "Endure it first, we'll soon arrive at my house." Jing Xian didn't even move her legs and anxiously cried out and pleaded. "Please, master. I can't hold it any longer." "Shit, how troublesome." Sergeant Marshal Hale grunted unhappily and waved. "There's a restroom just around the corner. Let's go there." "All right." Jing Xian deliberately looked relieved and happy. After following him to the outside of the restroom, she rushed inside while covering her lower part. Sergeant Marshal Hale didn't follow her but leaned on the wall while thinking quietly where to get a lot of wealth. Some thousands of meters away from that place, Jing Xian's figure suddenly appeared out of nowhere. The moment she saw Tang Xiu appear, she casually came to him and asked respectfully, "Are you Great Tang Heavenly Emperor?" "I am." Tang Xiu nodded. "I've accomplished my mission." "That Argent guy should now think that I'm still in the restroom," said Jing Xian with a smile. "Your act was great." Tang Xiu smiled with satisfaction. "Take this 7th grade artifact as your reward." "All right, you can leave now, but I advise you to go elsewhere. This floating snow city is not a good place to stay for long." Jing Xian received the 7th grade artifact and put it into her interspatial right without looking at it. Then, she smiled. "Great Tang Heavenly Emperor, Grandma told me that she'll take me with her away of this immortal domain. Also, she promised me that if I perform well, she will take me as her disciple, so I'm going wherever you go in the future." "Come again?" Tang Xiu didn't expect that Sable Fiend Scorpio had given such a promise to Jing Xian. Whoosh! Sable Fiend Scorpio bolted from a distance and then appeared in front of Tang Xiu and Jing Xian instantly. She then looked at Tang Xiu and respectfully said, "Lord, Jing Xian is the daughter of an old friend of mine. I hope you can allow me to accept her as my disciple."